Welcome to Restoring Education in America with Priscilla Rahn. She's a master educator and author, leading the conversation to restore the American mind through wisdom, virtue, and truth.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Restoring Education in America. I'm your host, Priscilla Rahn, and I am so thrilled that you have decided to join the conversation today. We are getting ready for summer break. We have a lot of graduations that are happening right now. But if you are looking for a new school for your child this fall, I'd like to share with you my school that's opening. It's called Excalibur Classical Academy. We're opening in the Centennial, Colorado area. We are accepting students kindergarten through third grade. And our mission and vision is restoring America's heritage by developing servant leaders who are keepers and defenders of the principles of freedom for which our founding fathers pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. So if you would like more information, I need to tell you, something really exciting I want to share with you is that we are offering 100% scholarships for all of our inaugural families this fall. So please go to our website, ExcaliburClassicalAcademy.org, to learn more, and we will make sure that you get all of the information. But something else that's really important for you to know is that we take safety very seriously for our school. And we want you to know that all of our teachers will be trained and will keep your children safe. And I am going to bring my next guest to the stage who understands and appreciates the importance of public safety and school safety. Welcome to my DA, Mr. George Brauchler. Woohoo. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's a nice reference to something that took place off camera. I am thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
So as I was saying to you, because when we spoke at a fundraiser recently, you didn't know I had this show. And I said, the interviewer becomes the interviewee.
That's right. Because I've interviewed you several times on the radio.
Yes. I was a very good interviewee. I know
you were
your favorite.
Yes, of course. That's why we had you on so many times.
Well, it's great to have you here to talk about what you're doing as our new DA for the 23rd Judicial District. And you just haven't stopped. I mean, you've just been going. But wait, before we get into the conversation, in case there's someone who's been living under a rock who doesn't know who you are, I'm going to share a little bit of your bio. Okay.
Oh, okay. The truthful parts or the made up stuff?
Just the made up stuff. Just
that's the best
that makes
part.
you look good.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. So George Brauchler is the district attorney for Colorado's 23rd Judicial District, serving Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties.
Also true.
The first, it's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth on my show. You are the first new judicial district. You are it. I have to repitch this. Oh my goodness. You're in. Why can't I read?
It's the first new judicial district in Colorado in more than 60 years.
It's fresh and new. You've got your second win now. Okay. So you previously served as the elected DA for the 18th Judicial District. We just can't get rid of you. You've been my DA forever.
I know. It's a lot like either a boomerang or a rash.
Yeah. So with a legal career spanning more than 30 years, you have served as a prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, special assistant U.S. attorney, and military legal officer. You're widely known for prosecuting several of Colorado's most high-profile mass shooting cases, including the Aurora theater shooting. In addition to your civilian legal work, you are a colonel in the Colorado National Guard, where you serve as a military judge and legal advisor, and you're a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Army War College. You've also taught as an adjunct professor at multiple law schools and trained prosecutors both nationally and internationally. So, sir, thank you for your service.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for paying taxes, Priscilla, and other viewers of this, because without taxes, there is no DA's office and there is no Army. And I recognize that. So thank you for doing that.
Well, as an Army brat, I have a lot of respect for our military. And I don't think I ever told you about my enlistment story. I'm honorably discharged from the U.S. Army myself.
Yes. I don't know that.
And I got $100 off my concealed carry permit for Douglas County for bringing my discharge papers to the sheriff's office. Yes. So, there's a benefit to having served our nation. And so I'm really grateful. But, what I really wanted to talk to you about is, crime in Douglas County and in the judicial area, and what you've been dealing with. So, well, let's go back. Like, what really drew you into the legal field? What drew you to that?
That's a really good question with a long, convoluted answer that begins with, I never wanted to be an attorney. Didn't grow up wanting to be an attorney. Didn't go to college dreaming of being an attorney. Didn't want to be an attorney as I was finishing up college. My goal was to be an active duty Army officer and drive tanks. The branch is called Armor. It was intriguing to me. We were coming out of Desert Storm 1. That gives you some age on me. I wanted to go to war and blow things up. I just didn't want to have to walk to get there. So I thought Armor was probably the best, because you could drive. And one thing led to another, and I got talked into taking the LSAT. I took the LSAT, and I had spoken with my mom, who was an attorney at the time, and she went later in life. She went when she was in her 40s with a 12-year-old, my 8-year-old brother, and my 1-year-old sister. And she was a chief investigator for the Office for Civil Rights out of Denver for much of her career. And so I just had never wanted to do it. But when I talked to her about it, she said, oh yeah, you should definitely give it a try. So I did the LSAT thing. It turns out I'm pretty awesome at multiple choice, did well enough, got into law school, and then went through it, and still no interest in being the DA. I was more interested in just being an active duty JAG prosecutor. And I ended up taking an internship at the DA's office in Jeffco, and I kind of fell in love with it. I got to do my very first jury trial before I graduated law school. It was July of 1994. That's 32 years this July ago. And I started cutting class to go do jury trials down in Jeffco, or just handle a docket and learn stuff. And so I'd say before I graduated, I'd done probably 8 or more jury trials. And then when the Army offered me the opportunity to convert an active duty commission worth 4 years of service to a reserve commission with 8 years, I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do it. And so I did it. And man, the rest is kind of history. I just never remembered it was only 8 years until recently. And then I'm like, wait, it's been 31 years. Oh, I missed it. So they're going to mandatorily retire me here at the end of May. I do not want to go. I want to keep serving. But as it turns out, it's up or out. So if you reach about 30 years of commissioned service and you don't get promoted to general, then they kick you out. And that's where I'm at.
Well, then we have something in common. Since you're retiring this May, I'm retiring this May.
Whoa!
Yes. Next few weeks, I'm like, sayonara, public school.
Wow. How many years?
32. 32.
Whoa. So you've been doing this since 94?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Since you were like 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of impressive.
I was really smart. My mother's
Doogie
Asian.
Howser.
Yes. My mother's Asian. My father was an officer. So like they just kind of.
Oh, what a great combination. And by the way, you're the only one on this podcast that can make such a reference. So that's great.
Okay. You know what? I know, because we joke every time I get around you, it's just all laughs.
Same.
So is there a difference? Do you notice a difference between military law and civilian law? What's the difference?
By design, there's a difference. The purpose of the Uniform Code of Military Justice has as one of its goals justice, but its primary function is to discipline the troops and to provide a mechanism to encourage order and discipline. And so there are a lot of military offenses that don't exist in the civilian world. And those could be absent without leave. They could be disrespect to a superior officer, missing a movement, failure to obey orders, those kinds of things. But there's also some substantive criminal stuff like we have here in Colorado. But the goal is different. And now the goal has been changing recently with some congressional changes into how we prosecute military cases through something called OSTIC, OSTC, Office for Special Trial Counsel. But mostly it's a commander's prerogative. So the commander, and when I say a commander, to have a court-martial, it's called GCMCA, General Court-Martial Convening Authority. And that authority rests with usually 1 to 4 star, depends on what their command is. And they have a lot of discretion, less today than they did 10 years ago, but a lot of discretion. We just don't have anything like that. When I was the chief of military justice down at Fort Carson, then ultimately Northern Iraq, I couldn't make decisions about what to do with cases. I had to go and see the old man or the chief of staff and say, hey, sir, here's what we got. Here's what I recommend. And he could and has said many times, I don't want to do that with this soldier, or I definitely want to get rid of this soldier. As DA, nobody on the planet Earth except the voters can tell me what to do. And they get to tell me that every 4 years. But after that, it's kind of what I want to make of the position.
Is it like that movie, A Few Good Men? It's like, people obey orders, otherwise people die, and you can't handle the truth, right?
It's not like that on the civilian side. In the I have not had such a case as that on the military side, and I've done some courts martial. But it's a little different. It's just a little different. There are things that have to take place that are different as well. Sexual assault, let's say. The components are a little bit different because in the military, there are certain relationships that are verboten, that are forbidden, just by virtue of rank or just by virtue of where they fall potentially in your chain of command, things like that. We don't have anything like that out here. I mean, closest I can think of is if it's a law enforcement officer and a would-be defendant, maybe teach your child, but that's more age-based. And, the military doesn't prosecute civilians. 99.9% they don't. There are certain deployed opportunities where they could. And then we also don't prosecute children. That all gets left for the feds. So it's a little bit different. I have not had that case, but I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to say, did you order the code red? But I've just never had that case.
So, okay, let's talk about civilian life. You have prosecuted that big profile case. I was living in Aurora when the Aurora shooting happened, and the offender, he was a minor. Was he a minor? No, he was an adult.
He was about 24 years old.
Oh, okay. So he was a young adult. His frontal lobe was not developed yet.
It's weird because he was a kind of a super smart guy that was in the PhD program at the University of Colorado Health Sciences Center. Hard to imagine his brain not working right.
But that's biological from what I understand. Every psychologist that I talk to says that fog is there in the frontal lobe till you're like 28 years old. But anyway.
Maybe, but I mean, listen, I've been hearing this stuff now for years as a reason to provide mitigated outcomes for some of these decisions. But, we're talking about the military. You have young men and women who are ages between 18 and 25, who enlist in the military and do heroic things on behalf of their fellow soldiers and their country. And we don't diminish it by saying, well, you probably did it because your brain was in a fog. You don't deserve any sort of accolades, awards, promotions. You don't deserve any of that. But when someone does something horrible, and it's not the bulk of 18 to 25-year-olds, that's nonsense. Mm-hmm. We try to find some ways to excuse their evil conduct by saying, well, you know what, their brains aren't formed. And I'm like, maybe we should think about whether they should have the right to vote. If that's your pitch, should we have the right to vote for people who make such decisions and their brains aren't working right?
Yeah, no, this is a great conversation. So for me as an educator, and we're seeing, an increase in school shootings and things like that. And this
Product placement. That was product placement.
I couldn't see what it was. I can't tell if it's Mr.
It was,
Pibb. Is it Mr. Pibb?
No, it was Coca-Cola Cherry.
Cherry Coke. Okay.
That was so good.
That's staying in. I'm not editing that out.
Thank you. That's how people know me, as the slurper.
Okay, so let's talk about this, because we're seeing more activity. I was a baby teacher when Columbine happened.
Yeah.
And now I'm retiring. And since these 20 years have passed, we've just seen more and more and more of this behavior. What have you noticed that has changed in the minds of young people? What are you seeing? Are you seeing signs of some of this behavior that you can warn us about?
I wish I could point to one particular thing, but I'll tell you some of the telltale signs systemically that there's going to be problems, because I'm a firm believer in the idea that if we as a people, as a society, as a community could figure out ages 0 to 12, we could make being DA a part-time job. We could make it super boring, because a lot of what people end up doing or becoming later in life are the product of those early years. And so one of the telltale signs that we probably don't pay enough attention to is truancy. If you find in public schools kids that are truant in school, it is usually an indication there is something going on at home. And that something should be explored pretty vigorously right up front to see what it is. If we could nip those things in the bud, we have a better shot at producing, I think, a well-developed, happy, law-abiding person. But we have diminished truancy. Like, it used to be something that the DA's office handled. And then the law was changed some years ago, and they said, no, that's just too harsh. Let's take the prosecution out of this entirely. We'll make it a civil kind of remedy thing. And since then, it hasn't been close to what it needs to be to provide the kind of services and help that these kids deserve and that we should be obligated to provide. So the other things that I think are obvious, but I will tell you that we can't yet quantify the negative impacts, are phones and social media. And I realize that Denver is making an effort to do certain things, and there's a bell-to-bell approach in some places like California and others. I'm all in favor of that stuff, believe me. It's not enough. As long as these kids have access to social media and phones, and remember what that means, it's a mirror. If they have access to it, other people have access to them. What you can't yet quantify is, what does that do to this developing brain? And while I'm not sold on the idea that 18-year-olds can't make responsible decisions, I'm sold on the idea that a 13-year-old boy is one of the dumbest creatures on the planet Earth, and they have access to these phones. That's a big weakness. I also think we've become such a permissive community in terms of drugs that we're not really sure of all the people that are using below the age of 21 and the impact that it'll have on brains. But just from even my time in high school, there's nobody that I know of that was smoking a lot of weed back then that I think to myself, man, they turned out to be a huge winner. I don't know anybody like that. So all of those things combined are taking place in an environment where we have done more to eliminate in-person bullying than I ever thought we could. It just doesn't happen at the same level. It still happens. It doesn't happen at the same level and with the same permissiveness that it did when I was a kid, but it's been taken over by other things. And I think that that's the social media piece, and then the drugs, and then the truancy piece. And the backdrop to all of this, the fix to all of this, good families, intact families that support not only their educational system, but support their kids in it. That could cure a lot of this too.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with all of those things. I concur, because you and I grew up in a generation where we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have social media. I mean, I have students who don't even have their parents' phone numbers memorized. If they say, I need to call my parents, and I'm like, go ahead and use my phone and call them. And they're like, I don't know their number. And I'm like, I had everybody's number memorized.
Yep. That's right.
And it was such an amazing time. I told kids, we didn't even have a microwave until I was a freshman in high school, where my dad was close to retirement, and we moved to Fort Hood, and had a microwave. It was such a big deal. And so,
and it was big and loud.
Yes.
I mean, it was huge, and
I
it
was
drew power off the grid at a huge amount.
The other thing was, you talk about technology. I took a typing class my senior year in high school, typing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And every paper that I had to, you used to have to handwrite all my reports until my senior year. And a classmate said, we have an electric typewriter. And it was like the biggest deal. Like one student at school had an electric typewriter.
Yep.
And I allowed him to type my report for me.
Oh, that's so nice. I imagine there was nothing attached to that offer.
Well, here's the problem with that, George, that he had so many of our classmates who said, oh, I think he just liked typing on it. And so he offered to type everybody's report. And
oh
he
my
didn't show
gosh.
up to school. He didn't show up to school the day it was due.
Oh no. Oh no.
And back then the teacher was like, it's due today. And if it's not due, or if it's not here, it's a 0. And I had to.
What about all the half credit makeup time that my kids get? They always get a chance to get back. I've told them the same thing. I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, if I do corrections, I can get partial credit. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I have no idea what you're saying. These words make no sense to me because they didn't exist back then.
There was no DEI back then.
No.
I can tell you, I didn't get any DEI. And so anyway, that's another story. Another fun story. But you hit the nail on the head with the technology, because we really can't control it. And there's no amount of firewalls that school districts can put on the one-to-one Chromebooks. Kids are getting around them.
Of course they are.
Now, George, you know what? They're so smart. They have figured out how to use AI. And just this past week, a student was able to tell AI there's a bomb in our school and cause all kinds of problems, and ended up getting suspended right before the final concert. So technology is not what it's cracked up to be, and it's very dangerous, and kids are bullying and they're using it. So this is a great commercial for Excalibur Classical Academy, because we are going to be technology free. Our teachers,
no lights, no nothing, huh? Indoor plumbing,
candles, outhouses.
This sounds amazing.
Yes,
I think I can hear the theme to Little House on the Prairie somewhere.
Well, whiteboards and projectors. That's about the extent of it. But I think it's just important for their little brains to have relationships.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
But George, you're a dad of 3, right?
4.
Dad of 4. How has being a parent impacted your view of law enforcement, like in our schools and in the district? Has that helped you, make different decisions from a father standpoint?
Well, we're pretty lucky here in Douglas County because we have great law enforcement. And I have heard of communities, maybe even where you teach and in Aurora, that resist the idea of having law enforcement inside the schools because their historical experience with them has been less than positive. That's just not my experience. I want more SROs in the school. I want more people to be able to be a deterrent to those who think bad thoughts and be able to respond quickly to those who act on them. I mean, for the guy that helped prosecute the felonies out of Columbine, that led the prosecution of STEM, I want police to be 10 steps, not 10 seconds away from what happens in that school. And the good news for us is, Sheriff Weekly puts almost an SRO in every single school. I like that a lot. I just think it makes us better and safer.
So in a situation we've seen around the nation, obviously, law enforcement can't be everywhere. I mean, there's no school, I tell parents, there's no school that's Fort Knox,
right.
And there are loopholes. There's things that you can do to be smarter, to keep kids safe. And that's another thing we take very seriously at Excalibur Classical Academy, and we will have trained staff at our school. But when we look
I understand that if the internet's correct, every teacher is also a former Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Is that true? Something like that. I can't remember what it was.
We don't disclose everything because,
Oh,
we don't.
cat's out of the bag. Sorry about that.
We don't disclose everything, but I can tell you, we take security very seriously
Awesome.
at Excalibur. Awesome. And I've said this multiple times that I'm a concealed carrier. People know that I'm very well
People
practiced.
are nicer to you in person than they are remotely, and there's a reason.
Well, yes. And I think part of that is we diffuse, right? We try to be nice to other people, and we try to be very, very much aware, and we stand for our 2A rights. And, we talk about this
absolutely.
a lot in our world, in the conservative Republican world. We talk a lot about 2A rights, but we also want to have common sense decisions that are made, that happens. That's another show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I do want to talk about what has hit home here in Douglas County.
Okay.
Is the STEM shooting and what happened around there. And you were a part of that case. What can you share about that case? And maybe you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, whether it be the school safety standpoint, the SRO standpoint, the family standpoint. Like, what would you like to share about that?
Yeah, I think this is another example of something you had just touched on just a few moments ago, and that is if somebody wants to do evil to somebody else in our society and they're willing to commit to it, they stand a pretty good chance of being able to pull it off at some level. And so in this particular case, you had two disgruntled students, an 18-year-old senior and a 16-year-old sophomore transgender male who had sort of been broken vessels in their own way. They found each other. The 18-year-old, in my opinion, manipulated the 16-year-old to some extent by saying that there were people in the class that he wanted shot up that were anti-trans. And as you know, over the last however many years, we've been conditioned culturally to believe that, man, if you get upset enough, violence is an appropriate response. So I don't think we should be too surprised when these kids end up adopting a similar mentality. But what's interesting is they go to the 18-year-old's house. They know that dad has guns in a safe, and the guns are exactly the way you'd want them. They're secured in a safe. I wouldn't call it an awesome safe, but it's a safe and it's a deterrent. They had to break into it with a crowbar and an axe over a long period of time to break it open. The ammunition was in the safe, but not in the guns. They weren't loaded. They loaded them up, and then they tried to secret them into the school by putting two of them into a backpack and two of them, including a carbine rifle, into a guitar case. And then they go to the school. School is STEM. A little word about what happened with STEM there, and because this is a problem. The sheriff's office under Tony Spurlock had been providing SRO services to STEM, and then their contract came up for renewal. And because they're a charter school, they have a separate path to doing this from other public schools. And they had, my understanding, not part of the negotiation, okay? My understanding is STEM at one point had said, well, we would like your SROs to do this and this and this extra duty, including helping us manage traffic in the parking lot. Well, listen, my kids all went to charter schools K through 5. I'm a big fan and a big believer of charter schools. And any parent who's ever been at a charter school knows parents run the traffic. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get volunteer parents. So there's our DA in a penny and a stop sign guiding parents in and around the circle. And Tony was like, yeah, our guys don't do that. Our guys do all the other stuff, site security. We deal with the problems, but we don't do your parking lot. And so that, amongst other reasons, STEM said, we're going to go our own way. They contracted with a private security company. And this becomes an issue here. They contract with them for an unarmed security guard. That company said, nah, we're going to agree to that, but we're going to tell our guy, you should carry concealed anyway. We don't want you in there without a firearm. So you fast forward to this day, these two come in with their backpack and their guitar case. And while there's security and you have to be beeped in by the nice lady at the front desk, there's a routine and rhythm that develops with kids that you're familiar with over a period of time. And so they see these two walk in. I have this on video from interior. Dude with the guitar case with the weapons in it gives a little hand wave, and the lady recognizes them and she beeps them in. And now guns are in the school. A lot of things develop before there ends up becoming shooting. But by the time the decision is made, let's do this. And in fact, he texts across the room. He's at one door. It's you know how charter schools are, unless they're built from the ground up, they usually take over an occupied commercial space and convert it. And so this was one that had a room that had really no windows, but it had two doors, an ingress and an egress on opposite sides. And he got on one side, stepped outside, texted all the way across the room to the 16-year-old and said, go now. And then they closed the doors. They pulled the little magnetic strip, he did, off of the door, so the door locked and you couldn't get in from the outside. It's designed to keep the bad guys out. In this case, they wanted to keep the good guys out. And then he reaches inside this guitar case and produces this 45 caliber hand cannon and kind of indexes the room and says, nobody effing move without saying effing. Very commanding, loud. Those words are just coming out of his face, right? They're just passing his lips when Kendrick Castillo pops out of his chair and rushes him. And that really becomes the defining moment of not just Kendrick's life, because it's also the ending moment of Kendrick's life, but it also becomes the moment that I think leads to four other people, a teacher and a student on the side where the 16-year-old was, and two other students, Josh and Brendan Biley, Josh Jones and Brendan Biley, and they shoot up and run right behind Kendrick. And when Kendrick is shot by this guy, they continue the fight with him, and they're able to take him to the ground and fight with him and disarm him, while across the way, the teacher and the other student are able to fight with the 16-year-old, even though the 16-year-old has shot several other people, and disarm that person. All of that is to say that despite whatever security measures were put in place there, if there's no Kendrick Castillo, Brendan Biley, Josh Jones, Jackson Gregory, or Lauren Harper, who's the teacher, if those people don't do what they do, I am quite certain we would have had far more dead students in that classroom, maybe even a dead teacher and a dead teacher's assistant. So things worked to an extent, but when the failure struck, this day was saved by a kid, by an 18-year-old kid, son of John and Maria Castillo. And that's why we honor him appropriately the way that we do. It's why they're seeking canonization for this kid. Whatever that little voice was inside his heart and his head that morning, I have no doubt in my mind that he saved lives and he stopped further injury. That's just the way it is. What else would you want to know about that thing?
Well, I mean, that's remarkable. And I think that's a really great point of how we raise young people to be that courageous and to be that reactive. And you're right. And then we just saw recently this principal who rushed someone with a firearm and was able to disarm them. And you're right, these heroes, they're everywhere, but we need to talk about that. That's, we train on fire, we train on hurricanes, we train on, lockout, lockdown, but we haven't really truly trained on active shooter. That's something that I have asked my school board members. I said, when's the last time someone died of a fire in a school? I don't remember, because we're constantly doing trainings on these things. And I said, the next level training, unfortunately, is active shooter and stop the bleed and triage. We have to become, these first responders to be able to react. And it's crazy because in my music classroom, I tell my students, if someone comes to the door, you see these metal music stands, use it to block yourself, like find something that you can use. But all of us rushing at the same time is more effective at stopping someone actively shooting than not doing anything. And it's sad that as teachers, we have to talk to our students like this, but we're not getting it from the district. We have to do this on our own.
I think the other thing that's true about that, and I agree with all of that, is there, and I don't think very many people know this fact, each of the 5 people who resisted the 2 gunmen were all familiar with firearms themselves. This had not been the first time they'd ever seen a gun. Kendrick had some firearms stuff with John. Brendan was a big-time firearms guy. In fact, he works at a range right now. This is a guy that when he disarmed the gunman, he dropped the magazine and checked the slide to see what was in there. And I'm like, who? That's like Jason Bourne stuff. Like, who thinks of that? And this was an 18-year-old kid. And Lauren Harper, the teacher, was a concealed carry holder. So, and the other kids had all had familiarization. And as I talked about that with some other folks, they're like, I get it. And it's the idea that we have so villainized firearms and made them so per se evil that there's a built-in fear and I think encouraged ignorance about them. But these 5 people that have an absolute respect for the firearm because they had familiarity with it, that's interesting to me that they're the ones that chose to take on these people. I don't know what the connection is, but I believe there's a connection. And so I think the other thing we have to do is to be realistic about the world that we live in, the country that we're in, and talk more with these kids, not just about what's right or wrong, but the realities of how some of these things go down. And we don't do it. The more we scare the crap out of kids by saying firearms are so bad, they can kill, firearms just kill, the more you get reactions where when someone shows up with a firearm, they're palsied into not being able to react or respond or do something to save themselves or others, but not these 5. And I thought that was interesting.
Wow, that's a great point. And yeah, I can see that for myself. The more I train, the more comfortable I am around firearms, and the more I know what to do and what not to do. And yeah, I think that's really critical. And in Douglas County and all the districts that you or counties that you represent, we do have a lot of 2A lovers here who are very familiar. And I would just encourage any educator, any parent to go take a class, get trained, get your concealed carry, and become comfortable with handling a firearm for safety, but also to stand up for your freedoms. And I think that's
right.
really, really critical. So, well, George, thank you so much for your time. I've learned a lot from you today. Believe it or not, I learned a lot from you. Sometimes.
That's insane. Does that have something to do with whether or not you've been drinking before we went live, or have I been drinking? Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Cherry Coke. Yeah.
It's cherry Coke on the can, but as you know, you can put stuff in the little hole.
Well, okay, that's a whole nother conversation of my high school teacher who drank out of a flask. Not like we didn't know what was in it. Well, it was not a flask, but it wasn't,
probably
one
medicine.
of those. Listen, she was relaxed all the time. Like nothing bothered her. She was a high school teacher, and we never knew what was in that she was drinking, but she was always, and it didn't look like steam was coming out like coffee. It just was just like she's pouring something in, and she's this really cool teacher. So you just never know.
For her rheumatism or something, sure. Of course. Back in the day.
But at Excalibur, we're gonna follow the law, and you're never gonna see us on the news. I
want to ask a question.
Yes.
How did you settle on the name Excalibur? And my kids went to Platte River Academy, and I'm like, okay, it's kind of near Platte River, but not really. Do you know what I mean? Like, how did you come up with the name Excalibur? Why?
Because prior to firearms, we used swords.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Actually, that's not the real reason. I don't know. The founder I think he liked, I know. Because when you think of the story of Excalibur, how a very special person had to pull that sword out of the stone, that everyone that comes to our school is going to be remarkable and special and able to do wonderful things that regular people can't do.
And will you have like a Lady of the Lake, that the sword originates from and all that stuff? And no. There's a book called The Once and Future King. I think it's T.E. White, but I think that's right. But that's kind of the definitive story about the Arthurian legend. It's pretty good. And if you get a chance to watch the 1980-81 Excalibur with Helen Mirren and a whole bunch of other people nobody can name, British movie, also very good. It has nothing to do with education, but entertaining.
Well, okay. Well, there you go. Well, we would love to have you at our ribbon cutting. It's going to be a beautiful new school.
I want to be there. When is it? When are you done? When's the ribbon cutting?
Probably the last week of August.
Ooh, where's it located?
Centennial near Maggiano's Little Italy, like literally right
Is
around the
there
corner.
any way to pull it down into the safe part, Douglas County? Is there any way to just drag it across the county line just a little bit?
Yeah, I wish. I thought about all those things, but it's easy access on and off the highway, I-25 and Dry Creek, super
That's huge.
close,
Big.
super easy to get to. And we are on target to open. First
Sweet.
day of school is September 8th, and it's just going to be very traditional. We're starting after Labor Day, and we're ending before Memorial Day.
But do you have a fall break?
Yes, we have a fall break.
See, now, did you ever have a fall break growing up? I didn't.
No.
Well, that's not
No.
traditional then. Traditional would be us.
Where no breaks and teachers didn't have all these days off and all of that.
Gosh.
But listen, we're going to be able to educate our children with a fall break, Thanksgiving break,
cool.
Christmas break, and a spring break, and not a lot of days off, but very.
How do people apply? How do you get into this great school?
Well, thank you for asking. You go to ExcaliburClassicalAcademy.org, and then there's an enroll now button. You fill out your little application. I call you. We have a face-to-face meeting with you and your child or children. And then I will invite you to be a student at Excalibur.
How many students is this thing ultimately going to have?
And at this location, 120.
You say at this location. Are there going to be other locations?
Well, when we outgrow. So this location, yeah, that would be great. So this location, we have 5 classrooms. We can fit K through 5 with 20 kids in each class. And then when we go to middle school, we'll have to get a new building because we can only
hope you have to keep getting new buildings. That's a good sign.
Yes.
That's a good sign.
Yes. We're really excited about the future. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool, Priscilla. I'm proud of you for being able to pull us off. That you don't just wake up one morning and go, let's have a charter school or a private school or any school. Nobody just wakes up and says, let's do this. And then it happens. Like there's a lot to this. I have no concept of what it is, but I think that's pretty awesome.
Well, you do, because you're building a whole department.
Yes, but mine is taxpayer funded. Right. So like I'm not out there seeking funders. I don't sell a product like on a per case basis. We already existed. All we did was kind of have that divorce between the 18th and the 23rd and then have to figure out a lot of the little pieces to make it going. You are starting something from scratch. There's a real entrepreneurial spirit to that. There's risk associated with it. There's an investment that you may not get back, what you put into it. I mean, it's an impressive thing. It's very American.
Well, if it doesn't work, you can hire me for something.
Let's do it. I hope I don't get a chance to hire you. In fact, I'm pretty sure I won't get to.
Well, Mr. DA, George Brauchler, my DA, thank you so much for your time today. And to my listeners, thanks for tuning in. Catch me next time. And remember, educating the mind without the heart is no education. So seek wisdom, cultivate virtue, and speak truth.
Thanks for tuning in to Restoring Education in America with Priscilla Rahn. Visit PriscillaRahn.com to connect or learn how you can sponsor future episodes to keep this message of faith, freedom, and education on the air.